All right, hi everyone. I'm Pamela. Oh yeah, hi. Sweet. All right, so I have been in tech for long enough to learn how to use a clicker. So I started in middle school making websites, and I pretty much kept making websites for the next 20 years. So I'm curious, how many of you make websites? Okay, leave your hands up. For the rest of you, how many of you use websites? Okay, fantastic. This talk is relevant for all of you. All right, so 2 years ago, I decided to take a break from tech. Normally I try to figure out how computers work. I decided to figure out how humans work, and specifically this human. So I went on a 4-month Buddhist retreat at a Buddhist institute in the faraway land of Berkeley. And, as you can imagine, we spent a lot of time meditating on this retreat, but we also spent a lot of time doing other things too, because the whole idea was to watch our minds while it did all sorts of things and to understand how it responded to different situations. The retreat is kind of like this microcosm of the real world, and everything just plays out just at a different level. So I would watch my mind while holding poses from Tibetan yoga, while sweeping, while washing the dishes. We all loved washing the dishes. We actually fought over washing the dishes. Not that people fight on retreat, but I also watched it while painting the walls, and also while eavesdropping. So, to be clear, eavesdropping was not a scheduled part of the retreat, but here's what happened. Between our sessions, we had breaks, and during those breaks, I liked to go and read Buddhist books out in the front lobby. Now, there was somebody visiting the institute, this woman that was particularly fond of talking about other people, and she would often do it in the front lobby at the reception. So as soon as my mind heard the gossip that would come out of her, my ears would perk up, and I wasn't really reading anymore, right? I was just listening to her gossip. And then my mind would start to form judgments about all the people at the institute based just on these bits and pieces that it gleaned from eavesdropping. So part of me really didn't like that, didn't like the fact that I, was listening to this gossip and becoming judgmental about the people around me. Feeling like, why should I have negative feelings of other people, based on this other person's opinions and interactions? For me personally, I get along better with people when I focus on their positive characteristics, right? But obviously, part of my mind really did like listening to the gossip. I know that because I could have easily just stood up and walked away and went somewhere else and not heard it, but instead I stayed and I kept coming back for more. So clearly part of me really liked it. And whenever I feel kind of this addictive feeling like this, it always reminds me of Gollum and his ring. Right? And I just imagine inside my head is like, my precious gossip, I must have it. So Gollum is great, but I don't actually want to be him. I mean, if anyone wants to hire me to be him, that's cool too. But not most of the time, not compulsed. So I'd be lured in and trapped by it. And so I tried to understand why is my mind so addicted to this gossip? And I came up with 2 possible explanations. One is that my mind, it wants to feel safe. And by seeking gossip, it can figure out who and what to avoid in order to feel safe. And I think that might be why we evolved gossip as humans, to figure out how we can stay safe. Another reason for me is that my mind really wants to be a good person, okay? You watch all the movies, all the superhero movies, there are good people and there are bad people. And you know that you want to be the good people, right? So one easy way to be the good person is just to find other people to be the bad people. And then in comparison, you're good. So if I seek out gossip, then I can find these other people to compare myself to and then feel, yes, I am good. So I think my mind, there are some good underlying intentions there, wanting to be good and wanting to be safe. But those intentions get distorted into these compulsions and obsessions, and then things just don't work out so well, and it affects the way that I am around, in my environment and around other people in a bad way. So I figured out that gossip was not so good for me, and also that gossip had this grip on me that I really didn't like, right? So once I realized that, I decided to do something about it, and the easiest thing to do was just to change my environment. So in this case, all I needed to do was find a new spot to read. This is a stock photo of me reading, of course. So I found a new spot to read in a quiet room, free from the temptations of eavesdropping. And that was, it took some effort to decide to make that change, but once I was in that room, it was great. So, I learned a lot of things from that 4-month retreat, and from this particular incident, what I took away is that, there are some things that my mind are attracted to that are not healthy for it. And I can watch my mind while it does things and observe how it responds. And then once I realize that something's not healthy for it, I can figure out what to change. And if I can change my environment, I will, right? And I'm fortunate to often have the ability to change my environment. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back to tech real soon now. So eventually I graduated from the retreat and I had to go back to the real world. The real world is pretty cool, right? There's friends, there's dancing, costumes, parks, lots of really interesting things in the real world. And I, availed myself of all those things. But there was one thing that I was avoiding: tech, or my laptop. My laptop just sat there waiting for me to rediscover it, right? And lonely, so lonely. But the thing is, I was torn, right? On the one hand, tech is great. I love creating things, and coding is this very cheap and eco-friendly way to create things. But on the other hand, tech can be really harmful. It's really easy to create things that are, bad for us psychologically, and really hard to resist those things once you're on the laptop. So I just kept going back and forth between these things. And then I saw Moana. And Moana, she realizes she's both a girl of the land and the sea, and she resolves it. So I resolved it. Obviously technology is both those things. Technology is a tool, it's a means to an end, and it's about how we use it. I did entertain fantasies that maybe we could all just go and live in the woods and abandon our phones and just, skip amongst the meadows. And I still think that would be a great fantasy, but it looks like technology is here to stay, so I'm just going to accept that. And since technology is here, then I decided the thing to do is to figure out how to use it responsibly and figure out how we can, help other people learn to create technology responsibly as well. So, yay, that meant I got to go back to coding. Woo! So coding is still really, really fun. So I went back to it, coding 9 to 5. Now, of course, sometimes coding is also really hard. Sometimes something doesn't work, and you feel like, I feel like it's never going to work, and I'm not good enough, and what am I doing here, and what if it never works, and they're just going to find out I'm a fraud, and all that stuff, right? And you just want to, So sometimes it's hard, and you get these really frustrated feelings. So ideally, when I feel frustrated like that, I would ideally, step away from the computer and sit and acknowledge the feeling and let it pass, be a good Buddhist. However, I usually don't have the willpower for that because I'm on a computer. And distraction is just a tab away. So, I open up all these websites that I can reflexively type without even thinking about it. And all these websites will happily distract me away from those feelings of frustration that I don't want to feel, right? And these websites, they're appealing for a reason. They are designed to hook us. There's actually a book called Hooked that tells you how to design websites that keep users coming back. The funny thing is that this was assigned reading while I was at a company as part of our book club, because it is possible to build healthy habits. It was assigned reading, and at that time, I had just rejoined OkCupid. And OkCupid is really good at hooking you. So I was sitting there swiping for hours. I literally swiped 10,000 people, and I ran out of people. So I'm addicted to this website, even though I know exactly how it works. I can see inside why it works, but even knowing exactly how it works, I couldn't resist because it was that good. So, it's not our fault. They're designed to hook us. And a lot of these websites, they optimize, for their key metrics, and that's usually around the amount of time users spend on the site. And so they'll often optimize for that despite what effect it might have on your happiness as a user. This is a chart from humanetech.com that, you can see that the people spending the most, that are the unhappy users, are the ones spending the most time on the site. So there's at least a correlation, not necessarily causation, but it's a nice chart. But you can just see, if you don't trust charts, you can just observe for yourself. When are you the happiest when you're using a particular website? What about the way you use it feels the best, right? So I realized I was using a lot of these websites in a way that wasn't good for me, that I didn't like. And that's the bad thing about the web is that there's all these websites that can bring out the worst in you. But the good thing about the web is that it's actually pretty easy to modify the web if you know how. And being a web developer, I know how. Yay. So that's what I'm going to show you. All right, so the first thing I did was decide that there were particular websites that I never needed to see again, ever. So I modified my etc. host. There's probably less technical ways that you can do this, but I like to do it because then people think I'm a hacker. So I blocked all these news sites, all right? Now, I'm not saying that, I think there's lots of good reasons to read news. However, when I read news, I'm reading it for the bad reasons. Just trust me on that. So these days, I only read particular news from a Berkeley paper because that's where I live and it's very relevant to me. And everything else just goes on the block list. It's actually much longer than this. I've truncated it for the screen. So that's what I started off with. I'm happy to find out about news from friends or other sources, but there's just too many news sites on the internet. The next thing I decided is that I never need to read comments. Yay. So I found this hide comments everywhere Chrome extension. And it does hide comments everywhere. It turns out I do need to read comments on GitHub, otherwise I don't get very good reviews. But besides that, I can hide it everywhere. And it's great, because the thing is, you heard my description earlier of how my mind responds to gossip. Comments to me are the same thing as gossip, right? I'm looking through the comments, searching for proof of who's good and who's bad, and where do I fall in there, right? So it's not good for me. Therefore, no comments. And then, of course, we have Facebook. And Amber already showed that you can kill your newsfeed. Very good. So that's gone. This is something I've actually had for the last 3 years. So this way, I can use Facebook for event organizing. So I do actually use Facebook to, connect with friends in the real world, which is, I think, a great use for it. But I don't need to see the newsfeed. All right, so YouTube. I do like watching YouTube videos. Sometimes a Muppet video is a really great way to unwind. I highly recommend phenomena. I just want to get that in your head. So, so sometimes I'll watch a video, and I think one video can be a great little break. But the problem becomes that there's all these recommendations. So here's the thing, is that software developers, we figured out how to make recommendations for people on our site, and use all these clever algorithms to come up with the best recommendations for each user. But these algorithms are too clever, right? They're come up with content that, yes, I do want to see every video, you're right. And then you can sit there for hours watching these recommendations. So to whoever developer created these recommendations, good job. They're very well done. However, I need to get rid of them, okay? Now, I couldn't find a Chrome extension that already got rid of recommendations, so I just wrote one myself. This is called YouTube Unhooked. And, I feel even a little weird even saying that I wrote it, because it's only about 6 lines of CSS. All you need to do is you find, does this even have like a thing? Oh, so cool. So you just have to find the divs that are holding the recommendations, and then you just inject a style sheet before the page loads that hides those divs, right? So I do have a whole GitHub repo for my 4 lines of CSS, but that is what it is, right? I spent way more time coming up with screenshots and copy and all that stuff. And of course, I called it Unhooked since the book was hooked. So look at this. This is YouTube now. It has a search box. I can still search for things, but then I just have all this beautiful white space. It's really refreshing to see all this white space. And it's the same thing on the YouTube pages. All right, so now we get to Medium. So Medium, I originally started using it as a replacement for Blogger, right? As a way to write stories, and you get this nice bonus that people can discover them. Me personally, we've already decided that I don't read news, and I just don't generally want to read things like news. So this front feed, when I go to medium.com, I want to write. That's what I'm coming to Medium for. So if I'm coming to medium.com thinking, oh, I would like to write something, and then I suddenly see all these articles that I can read, I'm now distracted away from the original purpose that I had, right? And then I might not write something, so it could actually stifle my creativity. So, of course, I got rid of it. So this is Medium Unhooked. It replaces the front feed with this nice little welcome, and you can, maybe I should add randomization to that to make it clear it's not a bot. And it just prompts me to write. So now I can go to medium.com and just focus on what my intention was. Now, of course, for some people, that may not be what you're using Medium for, and this is, I guess, what happens when we have these websites that have all these different audiences and functions. But given that I know how to customize a website, I'm going to do it. Okay, Twitter. So the first thing I did with Twitter is that I unfollowed everyone. So yes, I am a misanthrope, I'm antisocial, all that. So the thing is, it's not that I don't like the tweets that people are coming with, but I don't like seeing this stream of them where they're all mixed up together. And you read one tweet and it's completely unrelated to the next tweet. So instead, what I'd rather do is use a feed reader. And you can actually use Feedly and FeedBurner. I think they're the two to read people's Twitter feeds one user at a time. So I think that's a much nicer, more coherent way for the mind to make sense of tweets. So I do have a few people loaded up in Feedly. So I unfollowed everyone. So now it just shows myself. And you can see the Muppet videos. But I still had these problems of who to follow. Obviously, I don't need to know who to follow since I'm following no one. And then San Francisco trends. And this is just news, and this is news in its worst form, right, on Twitter. If I'm going to read news, I'm going to at least try to read it in long form. So I had to get rid of both those things. Oh, and also, I thought that this green icon was a little aggressive, kind of too eye-poppy, right? Like, you see that green neon icon pop up, and you're like, oh, I need to click it. I need to see what it says, right? So I decided I would kind of tone that down. So Twitter Unhooked gets rid of those side things, and it makes that notification thing just this subtle gray number, and you still can feel good even if you don't click it, right? You can leave Twitter with a feeling of accomplishment even if you don't click it. So I really like my new Twitter experience. And once again, another 6 lines of CSS. So, those were a bunch of the Chrome extensions I found, and when I couldn't find a Chrome extension, I would create one. I also found this great thing called Habit Lab. It's a project from Stanford, and it has a lot of these kind of nudges built into it, and the nudges are designed to help you improve your habits on websites. So they do have nudges like hiding the comments on YouTube, hiding the sidebar on YouTube. And the idea is that they employ different nudges and then monitor and see how your habits change as a result. So I've started taking my Chrome extensions and also turning them into nudges in Habit Lab as well for the people that want to try out the Habit Lab approach. I decided for myself that I want to just always, have particular things gone forever. But for other people, Habit Lab is a really interesting way to experiment with different ways of experiencing your websites. One thing that they do, which I really like, is I think it's called the gatekeeper. And you go to a website, and it'll have a little notice that says, loading, and then it says, okay, now just breathe, breathe in, breathe out. Are you sure you want to continue? And then a lot of times I think like, oh, no, you're right. I just typed this URL in and had no idea what I was doing. I don't want to continue. I like this breathing thing. This is nice. And then I can say no. So I really like that one. And it does crack me up as a web developer, because as web developers, we spend a lot of time trying to get our websites to load faster. And now here I am using these Chrome extensions purposefully to slow down these websites, right? So once again, I apologize to all the developers that have made those sites fast to load, but some of the websites, we just got to slow down. So that's Habit Lab. There's humanetech.com. There's making your phone black and white. Unfortunately, these Chrome extensions don't work on phones, as far as I know. So I made my phone black and white. That's a start. Otherwise, yeah, I do what Amber does. I just kind of throw the phone in the trash and ignore it for a while. So there's a lot of things out there. My thought is that we can use these tools. We can, teach people about the availability of these tools. But ultimately, most people are not going to use them. So I kind of think of them as an experimentation with, what it is that makes websites more enjoyable and healthy for us to use. And hopefully that experimentation eventually makes it back to the products that we work on and back to the designers of these products, right? Like if a designer sees, oh, there's this Chrome extension that gets rid of this feature on our site that's actually really powerful, maybe that's something that we should consider, when making our site. Because, hopefully long term, that'll just become a part of product design. In the meantime, we can code the web how we need it to be. All right, that's it. Thank you.